3,000 years. That's how long it had been since the Galactic Council wiped Earth off the cosmic map. A bright blue jewel floating in the vast expanse of space, obliterated in a heartbeat by a fleet of gleaming starships. The reasons were buried in the archives of history, reduced to whispers of human arrogance, defiance, and the Council's self-proclaimed duty to maintain galactic order. But humanity's legacy didn't end with the fiery destruction of their home. Fragments of Earth's children scattered to the stars like seeds caught in the wind. And those seeds had grown. When humanity fled the cataclysm, they were weak, disorganized, and desperate. A species barely learning to navigate the stars, caught between survival and extinction. They were refugees in a galaxy that viewed them with contempt, an anomaly to be managed, a lesson in the cost of rebellion. But humans had a way of defying expectations. In the shadows of the galaxy, they'd rebuilt. They adapted to alien worlds, learned forbidden technologies, and forged alliances in the dark corners of star systems where the Council's light barely reached. Now, after millennia of silence, they had returned. The story begins on a barren, windswept moon orbiting a dead star. The air crackled with static, and the ground trembled with the hum of massive engines overhead. A single figure stood at the edge of a cliff, a silhouette against the fiery glow of thrusters descending from the sky. The ship, a behemoth bristling with weaponry, bore no markings. It didn't need any. Its presence alone was a declaration. Humanity was back, and they weren't here to negotiate. The figure on the cliff adjusted the visor of their helmet, scanning the horizon. This world, once a bustling trade hub of the Galactic Council, was now a graveyard of their arrogance. Towers reduced to rubble, fields scorched to glass, and skies perpetually choked with ash. The Council thought their power was absolute, that their rule would last forever, but they had underestimated the resilience of those they had wronged. Signal received. A voice crackled through the comms. It was calm, deliberate, and tinged with a cold determination. They're coming. Above, the black void of space lit up as dozens of human warships emerged from hyperspace, their sleek, angular designs a stark contrast to the organic curves of the Council's vessels. These were not the cobbled-together ships of desperate refugees. These were precision-engineered instruments of vengeance, designed with one purpose in mind: to end the reign of those who once thought themselves gods. The figure on the cliff turned, stepping into the waiting dropship. Inside, a team of soldiers prepared for the assault. Their faces were a mix of grim determination and quiet resolve. No words were exchanged. There was no need. They all knew why they were here. For 3,000 years, the story of Earth's destruction had been passed down, generation after generation. It wasn't just history. It was a wound that never healed, a scar etched into the very identity of their people. And now, they had a chance to make the Council pay. The leader of the squad checked their weapon, a sleek plasma rifle humming softly in the dim light. "Remember the plan," they said, their voice steady but low. "We hit their power cores first. Without their defenses, they're vulnerable." No hesitation. A murmur of agreement rippled through the team. They were the tip of the spear, the first wave in a campaign that had been centuries in the making. Each of them had trained for this moment, their lives shaped by the stories of what the Council had done. For their ancestors, for Earth, they would stop at nothing. The dropship's engines roared to life, and the ground fell away beneath them. Through the viewport, the battlefield stretched out below, a wasteland of twisted metal and broken dreams. In the distance, the faint glow of Council outposts could be seen, their automated defenses already springing to life. But it didn't matter. Humanity's resolve was a force greater than any shield or weapon. As they descended, the comms buzzed with updates from the fleet. Human ships were engaging Council vessels in orbit, their coordinated strikes overwhelming the enemy's defenses. For centuries, the Council had ruled through fear, their massive fleets and advanced technology ensuring compliance from every corner of the galaxy. But they had grown complacent, believing their power unassailable. They hadn't accounted for humanity's determination or their capacity to. Even as the fight raged, memories flickered in the leader's mind. Stories passed down like sacred texts, detailing the destruction of Earth. They had grown up hearing about the blue skies and endless oceans, the warmth of sunlight on their ancestors' skin. None of it remained. All that was left were scattered ruins, shattered dreams, and a species forced to claw its way back from oblivion. That history wasn't just a burden, it was fuel. It was why they were here, why every strike and step mattered. As if sensing the weight of the moment, the enforcer let out a guttural roar, its glowing eyes narrowing. It shifted tactics, lunging with a ferocity that caught one of the soldiers off guard. The impact sent them flying, their body hitting the ground with a sickening thud. The team's medic rushed to their side. But even from a distance, the leader could tell the injuries were severe. The demolitions expert's voice cut through the comms. Charges are set. 10 seconds to detonation. The team began to fall back, their movements hurried but precise. The enforcer, realizing their plan, turned its attention to the relay. With a burst of speed, it charged toward the explosives, its intent clear. But the leader was faster. They stepped into its path, a grenade launcher in hand. The first shot struck the enforcer's chest, staggering it. The second hit its leg, forcing it to one knee. But it wasn't enough to stop it. The alien raised its blade, a lethal arc of energy building along the edge. And then the charges detonated. The explosion was blinding, a fiery eruption that consumed the relay and sent a shockwave rippling across the battlefield. The enforcer was caught in the blast, its massive frame thrown backward, armor shattered and glowing from the heat. The leader was hurled to the ground, their visor cracking as debris rained down around them. For a moment, everything was silent except for the faint crackle of burning wreckage. The team regrouped quickly, pulling their injured comrade to safety. The relay was gone, its spires reduced to molten slag. Without it, the Council's planetary defenses would falter, leaving them vulnerable to the next phase of the assault. But the cost had been high, and the fight wasn't over. From the smoldering ruins, the enforcer stirred. Its armor was scorched, and one arm hung limp at its side. But it wasn't finished. Slowly, it rose to its feet, its glowing eyes locking onto the humans with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. The leaders stood, their legs shaky but firm, weapon at the ready. "We've come too far to stop now," they muttered under their breath, their grip tightening on the rifle. "If you want to stop us, you'll have to do better than that." Before the enforcer could act, a sudden roar echoed from above. The team looked up to see a massive human warship descending through the atmosphere, its engines illuminating the sky like a second sun. The ship unleashed a barrage of plasma cannons, targeting the remaining Council defenses. The ground shook as explosions erupted in the distance, signaling the arrival of reinforcements. The enforcer hesitated, its gaze shifting between the humans and the approaching fleet. For the first time, it seemed unsure, as if realizing that this was no longer a skirmish, but the opening act of a much larger war. And humanity was no longer the underdog. As the warship's cannons continued their assault, the team retreated to their dropship, carrying their injured comrade. The leader paused at the edge of the battlefield, their eyes fixed on the enforcer. They didn't know if it would survive the onslaught, but it didn't matter. This was only the beginning. The Council would face much worse in the days to come. The dropship's engines roared to life, lifting the team into the sky. Through the viewport, they could see the full scale of the battle unfolding below. Human ships dominated the horizon, their firepower overwhelming the Council's hastily assembled defenses. The tide was turning, and for the first time in 3,000 years, humanity had the upper hand. As the dropship ascended, the leader leaned back in their seat, exhaustion beginning to creep in. But there was no time to rest. This victory, as hard-fought as it was just one step in a campaign that would span countless worlds. The Galactic Council had ruled with fear and arrogance for too long. Now they would learn what it meant to face the consequences of their actions. The leader glanced at their team, their faces a mix of relief and determination. Each of them carried the weight of their history, the memories of a world lost and a people scattered. But they also carried hope that, against all odds, humanity could rise again. The comms buzzed with a transmission from the fleet. Phase 1 complete. Preparing for the next assault. All units, stand. The leader nodded, their resolve hardening. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming their place in the galaxy, about proving that humanity wasn't a mistake to be erased, but a force to be reckoned with. They didn't know what challenges lay ahead, but one thing was certain. They wouldn't stop until the Council paid for what they had done. The fleet was in motion, a vast, coordinated armada that spread across the stars like a living storm. Each ship carried the weight of humanity's vengeance, their sleek designs glinting in the pale light of the distant sun. On board the command carrier, the atmosphere was electric, every member of the crew focused, every action precise. They were moving deeper into enemy territory, into the heart of what had once been unassailable. A sprawling council stronghold on a planet known only by its galactic designation, X-19. The leader of the ground assault stood in the carrier's strategy room, watching a holographic display of the planet rotating slowly above the table. It was a fortress, its surface bristling with defensive turrets and shield generators, its skies patrolled by squadrons of Council warships. X-19 wasn't just a military installation. It was a symbol of the Council's dominance, a message to every corner of the galaxy that rebellion was futile. For centuries, its existence had loomed over humanity's scattered remnants, an unreachable peak. Now, they were poised to strike. The captain of the fleet entered the room, their footsteps sharp against the metallic floor. Their expression was calm but tense, their eyes fixed on the display. "We have one shot at this," they said, their voice carrying the weight of command. "The Council will throw everything they have at us once they realize our plan. If we fail to disable their orbital defenses before the second wave arrives, we'll be overwhelmed." The leader nodded, their mind racing. They knew the stakes. Every soldier, every ship, every ounce of humanity's strength had been poured into this moment. Failure wasn't an option, but the odds were daunting. Even with the relay destroyed and the planet's outer defenses weakened, the Council's forces were vast and experienced. And then there was the other problem, the one no one wanted to speak aloud: the Enforcers. The towering alien that had nearly stopped them on the moon was just one of many. The Council's Enforcers were legendary, each one a product of centuries of genetic engineering and combat training. They were living weapons, their loyalty to the Council absolute, their strength unmatched. Intelligence reports suggested X-19 housed more than one, possibly an entire battalion. If that was true, even humanity's advanced technology might not be enough. On the surface of X-19, the Council forces were already preparing. Deep within their fortified command center, the Overseer, a high-ranking alien official with an aura of authority that silenced even the most hardened soldiers, stood before a console, their clawed hands moving with precision over glowing controls. They had underestimated humanity once, dismissing them as scattered remnants too weak to pose a real threat. That mistake would not be repeated. Orders were given and reinforcements were mobilized. Fleets were routed from neighboring systems to bolster X-19's defenses. But even as the Overseer worked, doubt crept into their mind. The humans had become something else, something the Council had not anticipated. They were no longer the disorganized species the Council had crushed millennia ago. Their technology was advanced, their tactics sharp, and their resolve unshakable. For the first time, the Overseer felt a flicker of something they hadn't experienced in centuries: uncertainty. As the human fleet approached the planet, their ships formed a tight formation, shields overlapping to create a near-impenetrable barrier. The first wave of fighters peeled off, darting toward the Council's orbital platforms. The platforms responded immediately, unleashing a torrent of energy blasts and missile fire. The humans countered with precision strikes, their weapons targeting weak points in the platform's designs. The battle was a chaotic dance of light and motion, explosions lighting up the darkness like supernovas. On board the command carrier, the tension was palpable. Every second felt stretched, every decision critical. The leaders stood beside the fleet captain, their eyes fixed on the main display. The assault on the platforms was progressing, but slowly. The Council's defenses were formidable, and the loss of each human fighter was a painful reminder of the cost of this campaign. Status update, the leader said, their voice. Platform defenses are holding, but we're making progress, replied a tactical officer. However, we've detected incoming reinforcements from the neighboring systems. They'll be here in less than an hour. The captain's jaw tightened. We don't have an hour. Launch the second wave. Prioritize the shield generators on the planet's surface. Without them, their orbital defenses will fall. As the second wave of human ships broke away and headed toward X-19's surface, the leaders' thoughts turned to the ground assault. Their team was among those preparing to deploy, their dropships loaded and waiting in the carrier's hangar. This time, the mission was even more dangerous. They weren't just targeting a relay or a supply depot. They were going straight for the command center, a fortress within a fortress, protected by layers of shields, turrets, and personnel. The leader made their way to the hangar, passing rows of soldiers making final checks on their gear. The air was heavy with the unspoken understanding of what lay ahead. Everyone knew the risks, but no one hesitated. This was what they had trained for, what generations before them had dreamed of. Inside their dropship, the leader joined their team, their faces familiar but hardened by the events of the last mission. The injured soldier from the relay assault was absent, their place taken by a younger recruit. The leader gave the team a quick nod, their expression firm but not unkind. "We've got one job," they said. "Get inside that command center and shut it down. We'll have support, but don't count on it. Once we're in, it's just us." The dropship's engines roared to life, and the team braced as it launched into the chaos outside. The descent was turbulent, anti-air fire lighting up the sky, as the Council's surface defenses fought to repel the assault. The dropship weaved through the storm of projectiles, its pilot calm and precise. When they finally touched down, the hatch opened, and the team moved with practiced efficiency. The battlefield was a nightmare. Smoke and fire filled the air, the ground shaking with every explosion. Human and Council forces clashed in brutal skirmishes, the sounds of plasma fire and shouted commands mixing into a cacophony. The team pushed forward, navigating the chaos with a singular focus. Their target loomed in the distance, its spires gleaming ominously under the planet's blood-red sky. As they approached the outer perimeter of the command center, resistance intensified. Council soldiers, their sleek armor reflecting the glow of battle, emerged in force. Automated turrets locked onto the humans, their rapid-fire energy blasts forcing the team to take cover. But they pressed on, using everything at their disposal: grenades, drones, and sheer determination. And then the enforcers arrived. 4 of them, each as imposing as the one on the moon, stepped out from the command center's gates. Their presence was overwhelming, their massive frames radiating an aura of invincibility. The leader's stomach tightened. This was it, the moment they had dreaded and prepared for in equal measure. The first enforcer charge, its blade cutting through the air with a sound that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. The team scattered, their movements synchronized as they fired in unison. Plasma bolts struck the enforcer, but it barely slowed. Another leaped into the fray, landing with a force that cracked the ground beneath it. The leader shouted orders, their voice cutting through the chaos. "Focus fire on one at a time. Keep moving. Don't let them pin you down." As the team fought desperately against the enforcers, the ground trembled again, this time from something far larger. From behind the command center, A massive shadow began to rise, its outline barely visible through the smoke and haze. The overseer's voice echoed from speakers embedded in the walls, cold and mocking. "You've come far, humans, but this is where your story ends." The leader's heart pounded as they caught sight of what was emerging. A colossal war machine, unlike anything humanity had faced before. Its cannons glowed with a deadly energy, and its armored hull seemed impervious to even the most advanced weaponry. For a moment, the battlefield seemed to pause, the sheer scale of the new threat casting a shadow over everyone present. The leader's grip tightened on their weapon. This was it, the turning point. Whatever happened next would decide the fate of not just this battle, but the future of humanity itself. The ground trembled violently beneath the leader's feet as the war machine fully emerged from the shadows. It was a hulking behemoth, its silhouette a nightmarish blend of alien ingenuity and raw destructive power. Its cannons, mounted on swiveling arms, glowed brighter, their energy building with an ominous hum. Around its base, a protective field shimmered, absorbing stray plasma blasts and rendering it untouchable for the moment. The team's focus fractured. Fighting the enforcers was already a daunting task, but this was something else entirely. The leader shouted into their comms, trying to regain control of the situation. "Priority target is the war machine. We need that shield down now, or it's over." The demolitions expert, already engaged in a deadly game of cat and mouse with an enforcer, answered through gritted teeth. "No promises. We'll need a distraction big enough to draw fire while I plant charges. And those enforcers aren't exactly letting us breathe." Before the leader could respond, the war machine's cannons fired. Twin beams of searing energy lanced across the battlefield, carving deep trenches into the ground. The heat was unbearable, even at a distance, forcing both human and council soldiers to scatter. One of the human tanks, a formidable machine in its own right, was struck directly. It exploded in a blinding flash, leaving nothing but a smoldering crater. The leader's pulse raced. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. They scanned the battlefield, their eyes locking onto a group of human soldiers pinned down near a wrecked dropship. Their armor bore the insignia of an experimental weapons division, a last-minute addition to the fleet that had been shrouded in secrecy. Desperation pushed the leader to gamble. "Experimental squad, do you copy?" They barked into the comms. A gruff voice responded, heavy with static. "Copy. What do you need?" The leader didn't hesitate. "Tell me you've got something that can punch through that shield." There was a pause, then a low chuckle. "Oh, we've got something. But it's untested, and we're not exactly in ideal conditions here." "Doesn't matter. Get it ready. We'll buy you time." The leader turned back to their team, their voice cutting through the chaos. "We're the distraction. Focus fire on those enforcers and keep them away from the squad. If they can take down the shield, we've got a chance." The team responded without hesitation, their weapons lighting up the battlefield as they launched a coordinated assault on the enforcers. The towering warriors moved with inhuman precision, their attacks relentless. One of them lunged at the leader, its massive blade cleaving through the air. The leader dodged, firing a burst of plasma rounds into the exposed joint of its leg. It staggered, but only for a moment, before retaliating with a backhanded strike that sent the leader sprawling. Pain shot through their side as they scrambled to their feet, adrenaline pushing them forward. The demolitions expert finally managed to break away, sprinting toward the war machine with a pack of charges strapped to their back. The leader provided cover, their shots precise, each one aimed at slowing the enforcer's advance. Above, the sky darkened further as more council reinforcements entered the fray. Alien ships descended, their sleek forms unleashing waves of fighters that engaged the human fleet. The air was filled with the deafening roar of engines, the sharp crack of weapons fire, and the distant echoes of explosions. The battle was spiraling out of control. And then something unexpected happened. The war machine paused. Its cannon ceased firing, and its protective field pulsed erratically. For a moment, it seemed as though the experimental squad's weapon might have succeeded prematurely. But the leader's gut told them otherwise. There was something wrong. Something deliberate. A voice boomed across the battlefield, cold and mechanical yet distinctly alien. It emanated from the war machine itself, amplified by unseen speakers. You have shown resilience, humans, a trait we did not anticipate. But resilience is not enough. The leader froze. It wasn't the overseer's voice. It was something else, something far older and far more calculating. The realization hit like a thunderbolt. The war machine wasn't just a weapon. It was a direct link to the Council's core intelligence, a hive mind that spanned their empire, orchestrating their strategies and ensuring their dominance. The war machine's cannons retracted, replaced by a series of smaller, more intricate devices that began to spin rapidly. The leader's blood ran cold as they recognized the unmistakable signs of a targeting array. It wasn't aiming for individuals anymore. It was calculating a strike that would wipe out the entire battlefield, friend and foe. Everyone, fall back, the leader shouted, their voice hoarse with urgency. It's targeting the whole area. Get to cover now. But before anyone could move, the war machine's targeting array faltered. The devices stuttered, their glow dimming. The voice spoke again, but this time it was laced with confusion. Interference detected. Source unknown. A blinding flash of light erupted from the horizon, followed by a shockwave that rattled the ground. The leaders shielded their eyes, struggling to see what was happening. When the light faded, they caught a glimpse of something descending from the sky. A massive angular ship unlike anything they had seen before. Its design was distinctly alien, but it wasn't Council technology. The comms crackled with panicked voices, human and alien alike. What is that? Is it one of ours? The leader didn't answer. They didn't know. The new ship unleashed a barrage of energy beams, each one striking with pinpoint accuracy. Council ships exploded in fiery bursts, their formation scattering. On the ground, the enforcers faltered, their movements becoming erratic as if some external force was disrupting their neural links. And then came the second voice, transmitted across every frequency. It was deep and resonant, carrying an authority that silenced the battlefield. Humanity, we have watched your struggle. Your defiance is commendable, but your survival hinges on more than vengeance. Stand down and let us finish what you started. The leader's heart pounded as they tried to process the implications. Who were they? Another enemy? An ally? Or something else entirely? Before they could decide, the ship fired again, its beams slicing through the war machine's shield. The massive construct convulsed, its protective field collapsing in a cascade of sparks. The demolitions expert, seizing the moment, rushed forward and planted the charges. They barely had time to retreat before the explosives detonated, ripping through the war machine's armor. The construct let out a final metallic groan before collapsing in a heap of smoke and flame. But the mystery ship remained, its presence casting a long shadow over the battlefield. The leader's instincts screamed that the stakes had just changed. Humanity's fight against the Council had always seemed like a battle of survival, a clash between oppressor and oppressed. Now it felt like something far larger was at play, something they didn't yet understand. The voice echoed again, colder this time. Choose quickly, humans. Your war is not what it seems. The battlefield went silent, as if the entire galaxy had paused to hold its breath. Smoke and debris hung heavy in the air, the ruins of the war machine still smoldering in the background. Every soldier, human and Council alike, stood frozen, their weapons lowered but still clenched tightly in their hands. All eyes were on the mysterious ship looming above them, its dark silhouette against the chaotic sky radiating an undeniable sense of power and purpose. The leader's comm crackled again, the deep voice cutting through the quiet like a blade. Humanity, you misunderstand your place in this conflict. This is not your war alone. It is the reckoning of an empire, the collapse of a system too long unchallenged. You have lit the spark, but you cannot control the fire. The leader's heart raced. Whoever, or whatever, was speaking had turned the battle on its head, but the words weren't comforting. They spoke of something larger, something out of humanity's control. The leader opened the comm channel, their voice steady despite the turmoil raging inside. "Who are you? What do you want with us?" There was a pause, and when the voice returned, it was slower, deliberate. "We are the Revenants, survivors of the Council's first purge, long before your species rose from its cradle. We have watched them shape the galaxy through conquest and fear. And now, at the edge of their arrogance, we act. But your anger blinds you, humans. This moment is not about vengeance. It is about survival." The words hit hard. The leader glanced at their team, their faces reflecting the same mix of confusion and disbelief. Survivors of the Council's first purge. Another species eradicated, like humanity had almost been. It was a bitter reminder of the Council's long history of cruelty. But even as the leader tried to process the revelation, a sinking feeling crept in. If the Revenants were here to fight the Council, why did it feel like they were sizing up humanity as much as their mutual enemy? The Overseer's voice broke through the comms, sharp and venomous. "Lies and manipulation. Do not listen to them, humans. The Revenants are destroyers, not saviors. They see you as pawns, tools to weaken us before they strike the final blow. If you value your existence, you will stand with the Council against this shirth." It was a desperate ploy, but the Overseer's words carried a grain of truth. The Revenants' sudden appearance, their timing, their overwhelming power, it was all too convenient. Yet the leader couldn't ignore the weight of history pressing down on their shoulders. Humanity's struggle had been born out of the Council's oppression. Their mission wasn't about choosing sides. It was about ending a tyranny that had spanned millennia. The Revenants didn't wait for an answer. Their ship fired again, this time targeting a cluster of Council reinforcements. The beams tore through the alien vessels with surgical precision, their wreckage spiraling down in flames. The Council forces, now in complete disarray, began retreating, their once imposing lines breaking apart like sandcastles against the tide. But just as victory seemed within reach, a new threat emerged. The ground beneath the ruined war machine cracked and split, and from the depths of X-19's core rose another construct, larger, more menacing than anything they had seen before. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a failsafe, a last-ditch effort by the Council to hold onto their stronghold. Its spindly arms unfurled, and its core began to glow with an intense, pulsing light. The Revenant ship shifted position, its weapons realigning to face the new threat. The voice returned, colder now, almost impatient. "This is the Council's desperation. Destroy it, and their grip on this sector will be broken. But know this, your choices here will echo far beyond this battlefield." The leader felt the weight of those words, but had no time to dwell on them. The new construct's core reached critical intensity, and a massive energy wave erupted from it, sweeping across the battlefield. Human soldiers were thrown to the ground, their shields barely holding. The Revenant ship was struck as well, its sleek frame jolting under the impact. But it didn't fall. Desperation drove the leader into action. "We have to hit that core now, before it powers up again." They shouted into their comms. Their team regrouped, battered but determined, and charged toward the construct. The Council forces, though fewer in number, rallied as well, seemingly willing to sacrifice everything to protect their final weapon. The battle reignited with a ferocity that eclipsed everything before it. The leader's team fought their way through waves of resistance, their movements a blend of discipline and sheer willpower. Overhead, the Revenant ship unleashed its most devastating arsenal, beams of light carving through the construct's armor. But the core remained untouched, its glow intensifying with every second. As the team reached the base of the construct, the demolitions expert called out, "This thing's shielded. We'll need to get inside to plant charges." The leader gritted their teeth, scanning for an opening. Then they saw it, a narrow access point near the base, exposed by one of the Revenant's earlier strikes. "There, cover me," they ordered, sprinting toward the gap. The team laid down suppressing fire, holding back the enforcers and council soldiers long enough for the leader to slip inside. The interior was a labyrinth of glowing conduits and alien machinery, the air humming with raw energy. Every step felt like walking into the heart of a storm. They reached the core, its surface blindingly bright, and planted the charges with trembling hands. The timer was set, and the leader turned to leave. But something stopped them. A faint sound, almost like a voice, emanated from the core. It wasn't words, but a feeling, an overwhelming sense of warning. The core wasn't just powering the construct. It was connected to something larger, something buried deep beneath X-19's surface. The leader's comm buzzed. "Charges set," the demolitions expert asked, urgency in their voice. "Yes, but..." The leader hesitated. "This thing, it's not just a weapon. It's part of something bigger." "Then blow it and run," came the reply. The leader sprinted out of the construct, the charges detonating moments after they reached cover. The explosion was deafening, a wave of fire and light that consumed the construct entirely. The council forces fell back, their morale shattered, and the Revenant ship hovered silently, its weapons now still. But as the dust settled, the ground shook again. The cracks beneath the battlefield widened, and from the depths emerged something ancient, a massive structure, far older than the Council's empire, its surface etched with symbols that no one could decipher. The Revenant voice returned, softer this time, almost reverent. "You have awakened it, the true architects of the galaxy's fate." The leader stared in disbelief. This wasn't the end of the war. It was the beginning of something far greater, a conflict that stretched beyond humanity's revenge or the Council's dominance. And for the first time, the leader felt not just fear, but the air was heavy with the aftermath of destruction, the faint hum of the ancient structure rising from the depths of X-19 filling the silence. No one moved. The battlefield had transformed into something surreal, a place where centuries of conflict seemed insignificant compared to the monumental presence that now loomed over them. The leaders stood frozen, their mind racing to comprehend what they were seeing. The symbols carved into the massive structure glowed faintly, pulsing as if alive, each pulse sending ripples through the ground and air alike. The Revenant voice broke the silence, still calm but tinged with an emotion the leader couldn't quite place. "This is the truth buried beneath your war. The Council feared it, as they feared us. You have done what we could not. You have awakened the Makers." "Makers?" the leader asked, their voice unsteady. They glanced at their team, who had regrouped nearby, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and dread. "They are the architects," the Revenant voice continued, "the original creators of the systems that govern this galaxy. Long before the Council, long before us, they ruled. When their time ended, they vanished, leaving behind only remnants. The Council built their empire atop those remnants, twisting their designs for control. And now, you have brought them back." The leader's chest tightened. They hadn't just fought to survive, hadn't just sought revenge. They had unlocked something far greater, something they barely understood. A low rumble emanated from the structure, growing louder with each passing second. Lights flickered across its surface, forming patterns that seemed almost intentional, like a language just beyond comprehension. Suddenly, the Overseer's voice erupted through the comms, desperate and furious. "You fools! Do you understand what you've done? The Makers will destroy everything. The Council, humanity, even the Revenants. They have no allegiance, no mercy. You should have left them buried." The leader hesitated. Despite the Overseer's track record of lies and manipulation, there was a raw sincerity in their tone. The Maker's awakening had unsettled even them, but it was too late to turn back. The leader turned to the Revenant ship, now hovering lower as if preparing for something. "If what the Overseer says is true, why are you here? "What do you really want from this?" The revenant voice replied, its tone unreadable. "We sought the Makers not for salvation, but for balance. The Council's reign is unnatural, a corruption of what was meant to be. The Makers will decide whether this galaxy can be set right or must be remade. It is not for us to interfere further." Before the leader could respond, the structure emitted a piercing light, and a deep, resonant sound washed over the battlefield. Everyone, human, council, revenant, fell silent, their weapons lowering instinctively. The light expanded outward, enveloping everything, and in that moment, the leader felt as if they were being pulled into a vast, infinite void. Images flashed before their eyes, worlds being formed, civilizations rising and falling, the Makers shaping the galaxy in its infancy. Then came the Council, seizing the remnants of the Makers' technology, twisting it to fuel their empire. The images shifted to humanity, struggling against extinction, clawing their way back to the stars. And finally, the battle on X-19, the awakening of something ancient and incomprehensible. When the light faded, the leader found themselves still standing, their team huddled close, wide-eyed and shaken. Across the battlefield, the Council soldiers appeared similarly stunned, their enforcers frozen in place. Even the Revenant ship seemed subdued, its weapons dimmed. The ground rumbled once more, and from the structure emerged a figure, not flesh and blood, but a construct of light and energy, its form constantly shifting and evolving. It spoke, not in words, but in a voice that resonated directly in the mind. "You awaken us from the long silence. Why?" The leader stepped forward, their voice trembling but resolute. "We didn't know what was here. We fought to survive, to break free from the Council's tyranny. We didn't mean to disturb you." The figure seemed to consider this, its form shimmering. Survival, tyranny, these are fleeting concepts, born of the cycle we created. Your struggle is but a reflection of those who came before. The leader swallowed hard. "If we've made a mistake, tell us how to fix it. We didn't come here to destroy everything." The figure pulsed, its energy radiating outward. "The choice is not yours alone. The balance has been disrupted, and the cycle must be recalibrated. We will determine what remains and what must be undone." The overseer's voice broke through the comms again, panic overwhelming their usual composure. "Do not let them judge us. Fight back. Destroy them before they decide our fate." But there was no fighting what stood before them. Even the Revenants seemed powerless, their ship hovering in silence. The leader clenched their fists, their mind racing. This wasn't a battle they could win with weapons or strategy. It was something far greater. They spoke again, their voice steady now. "If you're here to judge, then judge us fairly. Look at what we've endured, what we've overcome. Humanity has fought for its place in this galaxy, not to conquer, but to survive. If that's not enough, then at least give us a chance to prove ourselves." The figure remained still for a long moment. Then it spoke again, its voice echoing with finality. "The cycle will continue, but the path forward is not for us to decide. It is for you." The light intensified, enveloping the structure and the battlefield once more. When it faded, the figure and the structure were gone, leaving only silence and the faint hum of the Revenant ship. The leader looked around, the battlefield eerily quiet. The Council forces had withdrawn, their remaining ships retreating to the void. The Revenants had done the same, their ship vanishing without a word. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the leader took a deep breath. The war wasn't over, but something fundamental had shifted. Humanity had stood at the edge of annihilation and faced something beyond their understanding. And they had been given a chance, a fragile, uncertain chance, to shape their own future. The leader turned to their team, their voice steady. "We're not done. Not yet. But we got a future to fight for." As they began to regroup and plan their next steps, the faint glow of the stars above seemed brighter than before. The galaxy was vast, and its future was unwritten. Humanity had earned its place in that story, not through vengeance, but through resilience. And as the leader looked out at the horizon, they knew that whatever came next, they wouldn't face it